What's up, comic book fans, and welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me, and today we got a new mini-series with the first issue of Black Widow and Hawkeye. And we all know how special the relationship has been between Black Widow and Hawkeye, to the point where we're now celebrating 60 years for the two. So when Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, is accused of an assassination attempt that puts the relationship between the US and Madripoor in jeopardy, Natasha Romanoff's first instinct is, of course, to come to his aid. But she's also got a symbiote now that can have a mind of its own at times. And if Clint is actually guilty, then she'd be enemy of the state right alongside of him. Decisions. So if you guys are ready to find out if this classic pairing of these two legendary spies can survive this latest disaster, then you know what time it is. Let's get it. So we pick up this issue in Siberia, and this Russian assassin is on the run before he ultimately goes down and starts to get overwhelmed by these Black Widow spiders. But the spiders are then held back by their master, Natasha Romanoff, because she wants to give this guy a chance to talk for himself first. She could easily have her symbiote spiders pull the information she needs right up out of this guy. But she's always been a spy first, and she wants to do this the old school way and make him talk. But when she asks about the location of this guy's target, Clint Barton, and he tells her that he's been taken out already, she doesn't believe him, so she decides to let her spiders feed anyway. As Widow acknowledges that this symbiote is an undeniable asset. But it is a new passenger, a partner that sees her vulnerabilities like no one else, not even Clint. Then she recalls her spiders, and they begin to show her this guy's memories. She sees that he was in Madripoor, and she could see Clint, and that there was an explosion. But until she sees a body, then she has to believe that he's still alive. As then we're taken back to 24 hours ago in Madripoor, with Clint Barton on the run from that same Russian assassin. And Clint is thinking to himself that this assassin has the vibe of a guy that's gonna flay him and turn his skin into a winter coat. Just before this guy tells Clint that he's gonna skin him and collect his hide as a trophy. Clint gets right. But Clint is able to outrun this guy when he leaps off a rooftop and swings through a window. But not long after, he realizes that the assassin managed to leave a bomb attached to his back, as the Russian is then seen walking away after being prompted by the huge explosion, leading him to believe that his target had been dealt with. Then we pick up 36 hours ago, and Natasha is alone at a bar when she's then approached by Bobby Morse, who's also a spy known as Mockingbird and the ex-wife of Clint Barton. She's also one of the few people that Natasha calls friends, so she's very pleased when she meets with her. But this isn't a social call, and Natasha knows it, since she'd already seen on the news about what Clint's accused of. And Bobby confirms it when she says that she snuck away from a security detail. Then she tells Natasha that the CIA claims that she can't be objective when it comes to Clint, that whatever justification he gives, she'd believe him. And then she admits that they're right. Things between her and Clint have been going well, but now she's been placed on administrative leave to keep her out of the way while they try to kill him. That is, if the Russians don't do it first. But the only information that she has right now for Nat when she's asked for Clint's location is the name Mikhail, the Russian assassin that we met in the beginning of this issue. This guy had been arrested 8 years ago by the FSB, but CIA surveillance picked him up walking around in Moscow yesterday, and his bank account has been receiving anonymous deposits every hour since he'd been spotted. But then Bobby breaks it to Natasha that she won't be able to help her out on this mission, to which Nat already understands and doesn't require any explanation. Then Nat lets her know that she'll find Clint, and she does understand that she'll be going against the US government in doing so. But before Natasha leaves, she's got to know one thing from Bobby. Does she think that Clint is guilty? Then we're taken to 48 hours ago, as the foreign minister of Russia is being introduced in Washington, D.C. And as he begins to give his speech about the promise of Russia being committed to building a strong relationship with the U.S., an arrow is fired at the minister, Then we go back to the current moment from Clint's perspective, right after the explosion, and he wakes up in the back of an ambulance. And as Clint regains his consciousness, after thinking he was definitely a dead man, he notices that not only is he suffering from at least 4 broken bones and his brain feeling like it'd been put through a blender, but his hearing aid is now busted, adding insult to literal injury. But then the ambulance is attacked, and Clint realizes that he's about to meet the 6th assassin to come after him. As the door is ripped off and a mechanical claw swings in, clamping down on the leg of Clint, and then yanking Clint from out of the ambulance and slamming him to the ground. And just as this assassin is about to go in for the kill on Bart, the final blow is caught from behind by Natasha, a symbiote, after she searched 3 different countries looking for Barton. And after we get a sick reveal of the Black Widow in full symbiote suit, she tries chewing out Hawkeye for not reaching out, but quickly realizes that he's heard none of it, as he uses sign language to greet her. But she's just excited that her friend is still breathing. We then later on see them in a hideout of Clint's, and Natasha is going on about not being able to stay there for long, with the Russians knowing where he is and the Americans not far behind. And the likely troops already on the ground in Madripoor, making it hard to get over the border. But Clint is once again still missing out on all of this, as he's just now replacing his hearing aid. And as he's able to catch the tail end of what Natasha was saying about a possible contact that could help, he lets her know that he's not planning on leaving. He appreciates her coming for him, but she shouldn't have. He knows he'd be dead if she and her alien symbiote wasn't there to save him. And he makes a note that they still have to talk about that part, an alien symbiote. But he didn't want to drag her into this. If she tries telling him that this is an argument that he'd lose, just do what she's telling him to, and they'll make it. He persists, and he tells her that she doesn't understand. He needs to be in Madripoor. What's happening there, he needs to deal with, alone. But she replies that whether you've been framed or brainwashed or cloned, we'll deal with it together like we always do. He rejects this proposal and tells her that maybe he's not interested in their cycle anymore. They don't speak until one of them is in mortal danger, and then we forego everything for one another. I don't need a therapist to tell me that's not exactly healthy, Nat, he tells her. Then she accuses him of being a clone, but he's not a clone. He was there, he tells her. I was on the rooftop across from the ceremony. The minister was talking about the treaty, about his unbelievable success in rebuilding a bridge between the United States and Russia. He was talking about a more hopeful future, and that's when I did it. I am sorry, Nat. And now shocked Natasha is like, did it? Are you saying? Yes, he tells her. The Russian minister, I shot him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we got issue 2 of Black Widow and Hawkeye. So we picked this issue up a week ago in Madripoor, and Clint Barton is undercover and sitting down at a high-stakes poker game with a big-wig weapon supplier he calls Mr. Kohler. And at first, when he tries to sit down, one of the other players at the table attempts to throw him out. But Clint had done a good enough job of bending the old weapons guy's ear when he buttered him up just before sitting down, so the guy insists that Clint be allowed to stay and play. Then the guy attempts to kind of size up Clint, and he says to him, let me guess, you used every penny in your name to get into this event, just to pitch me some new product that you think will put you and your yet-to-be-named startup company on the map? So Clint rolls with it, and he's like, is it that obvious? And the old man's like, son, your bow tie is crooked. Then the old man asks Clint his name, and of course Clint gives him a fake name, Harry Barnes. So the old guy's like, okay, let's play around, Harry. I'll spot you, and I'll make you a deal. If you can win, you can give me your big pitch on how you're gonna change the world of defense forever. So Clint, of course, accepts the challenge, and he thanks this guy for the opportunity. But Clint also has a spy for a best friend, and another for an ex-wife, so he's picked up quite a few pointers over the years. And he uses one of them when he accidentally knocks over this old man's drink, spilling some of that drink on the old man's suit jacket. And as he attempts to clean up the old man's jacket, he manages to place a little tracker on him, just as the old man has him dragged out for the assumed fumble. Then we pick back up with right now in Madripoor with Clint and Natasha on a rooftop. And just as this little old lady from a little food shack beneath them calls out a dumpling order that's ready for the customer, Natasha uses her symbiote to drop down and snatch her up some grub, because she's starving right now. But Clint still wants Nat to leave him be, and she will, she tells him, as soon as he tells her the truth about the diplomat's death. And I'm assured you don't need my help defending against the many people who now want you dead. Oh, and she absolutely loves those chicken skewers, by the way. But Clint tells her that he's already told her what happened, that he killed the foreign minister. But both Natasha and her symbiote can tell that Clint's lying. So without Natasha even trying to or wanting to, her symbiote lashes out at Clint in an attempt to learn the truth. I can feel your connection. Deep, the symbiote tells Natasha, has caused you pain. Will again, it continues. But Natasha snatches it back and tells the symbiote not to touch him. Not now, not ever. And then she apologizes to Clint about that. But now he's a little bit shook. He's like, Nat, I don't understand. Is that thing inside of you? I'm sure one of you guys will have a nice little joke about that comment right there, so I'm not gonna touch it. But she tells him that the symbiote is a part of her, connected to her. So now Clint thinks that it sounds like her symbiote is jealous of his and her connection. And he reminds her that he was there first. Not that it's a competition. But just then he's hitting the neck with a dart. Poison, he says. Then the symbiote tells her that the enemy is nearby. And as Clint falls, Natasha asks the symbiote if it knew that there was someone there and intentionally didn't warn them. And the symbiote responds that Clint said to leave. Should have listened. But they're not leaving, she tells it. And she launches off that rooftop where Clint lay and across to the next where the gunman continues to fire on her. And she realizes while she's in the air that this guy's uniform doesn't look American or Russian. There's something familiar about it, but she can't quite place it. Meanwhile, as his shots land on Natasha, the symbiote takes these shots like it's nothing and tells Natasha that it can taste the poison down to the chemical makeup of it. And Clint Barton is definitely gonna die. So she takes down this assassin and then leaps back across to aid her friend and begs for him to stay with her as he lay there writhing in pain. Then she speaks to her symbiote and says, you absorbed the poison when I was hit with it. Can you also extract it from Clint? And the symbiote replies, you want me to help Clint Barton? And she's like, if you cared about me, you would care about him. And it warns her that entering another, there could be consequences. But doing nothing means he dies, she tells it. So the symbiote asks Natasha, who is Clint Barton? And she's like, what? But it tells her to focus on Clint. Let it see him from her thoughts and memories, basically. So she begins to think back to the first time that she got close to him. It was on Coney Island many years ago, and she had underestimated him. She learned to use men, to use people as a means to an end. No emotions, just usefulness. I think Clint knew that, she says. He sensed it. That getting close to me would be difficult and painful, but he did anyway. And in this flashback that she gives, Snapdragon is hunting her, but Clint comes to her rescue and saves her. Then Clint begins to fight Snapdragon one-on-one, and Snapdragon seemed to get the upper hand and dropped Clint. Then snatched up and carried Natasha away. But then current Natasha tells the symbiote that sometimes she thinks Clint likes being told no. Being told that he will fail, because that is Clint's true power. He thrives on being underestimated. As we see back in that flashback that he had got up and joked about how Snapdragon mocked his bow and arrow and called it a fool's weapon. Because this fool's weapon had just placed a tracking beacon on her so he could find where Natasha was being taken. But then back in the current day, Natasha continues to beg for Clint to stay with her. And then when she can no longer feel his heartbeat, she starts to freak out. No, 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 please. Save him, she pleads to the symbiote. You have to. And then Clint's eyes open back up, and now they're pitch black, like the symbiote. And then Clint calls out for Natasha, but in the voice of the symbiote. Meanwhile, that assassin reports back to the person that had sent him on the hit. Hawkeye's dead? This big bad asks the assassin. I shot him, sir, the assassin replies. Is he dead? The man repeats. He was poisoned. I don't know how he could survive it. There's no way he could. You were supposed to confirm, damn it. Where's the body? The man asks. The assassin responds that he was interrupted, sir. I'm so sorry, but this woman, I couldn't stop her. I shot her, and it was like nothing happened. She had a black suit, and then the big bad finishes that description asking if she had red hair. Yes, red hair. How did you know? Questions the assassin. She really can't help herself, this man says. Did she touch you? He asks the assassin as he wraps his hand around the assassin's throat. Did Natasha Romanoff lay her hands on you? He asks again. She grabbed me. Didn't hurt. I'm glad it didn't hurt, the man responds. But this will, as he picks up the assassin with one arm and he launches him out of the window of the high rise that they're in. Then as his soldiers come running in, he tells them that she knows where we are. Who does, sir? They ask. The Black Widow, he replies. She no doubt put a tracker on the unfortunate man I just threw out the window. So the security asks if they should move out. They can have a plane ready for takeoff. But the man responds, no. He doesn't want to leave. Let her come, he says. I'm sure she's dying for a reunion with Damon Dran. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, this is somebody who was thought to have been dead for like the last decade after Black Widow had turned him in and a rogue agent had like drenched him in acid. Man, sheesh. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we got issue 3 of Black Widow and Hawkeye. So this issue picks back up in the past following the previous flashback from all of the other issues in this series, cataloging when Nat had gotten taken hostage. If you remember in that last issue, Clint had put a tracker on Natasha's captives. So this picks up with his rescue attempt, and it's at the Russian embassy as he knocks out one of the guards on the roof with an arrow, and then he glides in. And as he tries to sneak in through the access door on the roof, Iron Man shows up. And Clint tries to get Iron Man to back away. But of course, he can't do that. And he knows that Clint's here for Black Widow, but she's a Russian operative and not their business, according to Stark. The US can't just allow a Soviet spy to live freely on American soil. So of course, this conversation ends up turning physical, and Clint hits Iron Man with an exploding arrow. You know, sometimes you just gotta go from 0 to 100 real quick. But inside, we see Natasha. She's being held captive by Damon Dran as they watch the Clint and Iron Man fight from the security cameras. And right now, Nat's scheduled to be returned back home and sentenced to death. But Dran offers to spare her if she works for him instead. But she, of course, rejects his offer. He should be more concerned with his own life, she tells him, because Hawkeye's here to end it. Then we pick back up in Madripoor right now, and Clint is freshly recovering from that poison attack. And right now, he's not very happy about Natasha allowing a symbiote inside of him. Pause. Even though this thing saved Clint's life, he worries about at what cost. He worries that it'll turn him into a monster. But Nat assures him that what happened to her won't happen to him. He only came in contact with a small portion of the symbiote. Although there will be some side effects, it does enhance certain feelings like anger, jealousy, and mistrust. And it actually took a little bit for Nat to learn how to control her emotional responses. But right now, Nat knows that Clint needs to stay hydrated, so she decides to go hit up a corner store for him real quick. Meanwhile, as Clint is there by himself, he starts to feel those heightened emotions. As he looks at his own reflection, the reflection stares back with black eyes, taunting Clint with all sorts of feelings of inferiority. And when Nat gets back from the store, Clint's not there anymore. And she already knows that he must have listened to the symbiote. As we then transition back to the rescue flashback, as Clint now swings in through the windows of the Russian embassy and takes out the guards. As meanwhile, one of them runs to Damon Dran to warn him that they tried to stop Hawkeye from getting through, but he's got arrows. So Dran decides that he will deal with this problem on his own, and he orders his guard to keep watch over the Black Widow. And when they're alone, Black Widow asks this guy to help her out and scratch the itch on her neck, since she can't quite reach it in this state. But this guy ain't falling for that trick. He's no fool, he tells her. But he could have fooled her, she replies, as she breaks free from her bindings and manages to knock this guy out. And then she finally scratches that itch. But then we pick back up with current day in Madripoor, as Clint sits alone on another rooftop. And while he's up there, the symbiote kind of seems like it's still trying to get tuned into Clint's feelings and emotions, as it acknowledges that Clint feels scared. And Clint actually agrees with the symbiote. Of course he feels scared, but he's doing the right things by distancing himself from Natasha to keep her away from this drama. She's always making sacrifices for him, so now it's his turn, he feels. But then the elevator that's right by where he's sitting chimes as if someone is coming up. And the symbiote tries to warn Clint, and it can smell them. Something bitter and metallic. And they're close. And I'm wondering if that's going to be Clint's new thing with this symbiote. Will all of his senses be enhanced? Will Hawkeye be on another level now? But when the elevator door is open, nothing is there. So Clint doubts the symbiote. Until out of nowhere, he's shot in the arm. And then an army of men descend down on him, and now he's surrounded. Then one of the men throws down a puck at Clint's feet, which reveals a hologram of Damon Dran. And Dran tells Hawkeye that he received his message about wanting to talk. So, talk, he tells Clint, before his men finish him off. But Clint offers himself up to Dran. Take him, kill him, use him, it doesn't matter. He just wants no one else getting involved in this. But Dran knows that Clint is referring to Natasha Romanoff. But the truth is, you should have died when we poisoned you, Dran tells him. And yet, here you stand. No thanks to your own actions, of course. You need her, Clint. You need the Black Widow. But she does not need you. You'd be nothing without her. And thanks to you, I will get another chance to kill Natasha Romanoff. And as the symbiote continues to taunt Clint, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we got the 4th issue and finale of Black Widow and Hawkeye. So when this issue kicks off, Clint is chained up, and initially he thinks he's dead. But the symbiote reminds him that he absolutely is not, and that he needs to admit his failures, and that he knows he wants to give up. And then Damon Dran is revealed as he taunts Clint that they've been in this position before, and all of this is just a vicious cycle between all of them, and that his attempted sacrifice was pointless. But as Dran gets closer, while giving the usual villain monologue, Clint is able to grab him with his hanging legs and wrap up Dran, all while the symbiote continues to taunt him, followed by Dran's men freeing their leader, and then training their weapons on Barton in unison. And then we go back to that rescue attempt in the past, as Clint fights Damon, but is catching an ass whooping at the moment. But then Natasha pops back up and ends up saving Clint, as Natasha thinks that that was the moment that their cycle started. She's died for Clint and betrayed her country for Clint. And in that past moment, just as they think they've got Dran down, he aims a laser on her. And now Clint dives in to save her. And then, once again, Iron Man is there to attempt to apprehend Barton alongside of Natasha for treason. Meanwhile, in the present day, Clint is thinking about the cycle between him and Natasha, while she's thinking the same. He's even had a therapist tell him that they repeat this cycle between them due to their comfortability with one another, and that even if the outcome is bad, the predictability between them makes them feel like they have control over their lives. And honestly, Clint can't really attest to the validity of that statement. But what he does know without a doubt is what's about to happen right now, because he knows that Natasha has arrived as her symbiote spiders begin to infiltrate the facility and incapacitate the guards. And despite the screams of the guards and this precarious position that Hawkeye is in, all he can think about is that Damon was right about the predictability of he and Natasha. And after all these years, people could just guess their moves. Of course, there's the occasional curveball of him getting a new trick arrow or Natasha's adopted symbiote, but it's all just the same routine in the end, which leads him to come to the realization that they're officially an old couple. And as Black Widow looks at Clint and asks him what the hell is wrong with him, he thinks that that's the millionth time she's asked that question since he's met her. And next, she'll tell him to use the 2 brain cells that he has left. And sure enough, that's exactly what she says. Next time, why don't you use the 2 brain cells you have left to not get yourself kidnapped? But his response to her is that this is an obvious trap, one that he knows she's aware of. And as she frees him from his chains, he apologizes for getting her into this situation. But not only that, there's something that he needs for her to know, and instead of just telling her, he wants her to see it for herself. So he requests that she use the symbiote to look into his mind, to see the truth of why he came to Madripoor in the first place. He had come to follow the head of KRV Tech, Marcus Kohler, a weapons manufacturer. But it was something that wasn't quite right. Kohler had been taking meetings with an unknown patron, and suddenly, his company's stock began to skyrocket. Kohler was making big moves, and Clint was sure that those moves were illegal. But what shocked Clint even more was when he followed Kohler to a meeting with a resurrected Damon Dran, who was previously thought to be dead. And with the help of Dran, Kohler signed 2 multi-billion-dollar contracts with 2 different companies, the US and Russia. And the plan was to start a war between the 2 countries by making it look like the US assassinated a Russian diplomat. And we know a weapons company would profit massively from a war like this. And by contract, Damon was set to make a percentage of those sales, a very large percentage. And he originally thought that they'd kill the ambassador out in the open on the day of the speech. But apparently he was already poisoned the moment he arrived on US soil. And by the time Clint realized what was happening, he had no other choice but to shoot the already dying ambassador himself to take the blame away from the US and stop this war. An ultimate espionage martyr. But then unfortunately, Damon Dran reveals that he'd been listening in on that entire explanation, and he assures Clint that his noble sacrifice has done nothing but delay their plans. And the peace between the US and Russia will ultimately fall apart. Because as he said earlier, some cycles just can't help but to be repeated. And then Dran has a little trick up his sleeve, as he clicks a button on his walking cane, activating an audible alarm that blasts loudly through the facility, incapacitating Natasha and her symbiote. Dran has discovered the symbiote's weakness to sound. And then we go back to that past moment, as Iron Man is now hunting Clint and Natasha to put them both away. And then we get a nice little simultaneous back and forth between present and past timelines, as in both timelines, Natasha has an idea centered around trust. In the past, she tells Clint to trust her, but in the present, she tells Clint to trust the symbiote. And as he begins to give in the present, we see him also giving in to her plan in the past, as she takes one of his arrows and stabs herself in the shoulder with it, and then stages a fight between her and Clint, clearing him of working with her, and then she drops a tiny explosive and escapes. Meanwhile, in present day, Natasha is able to fire a shot from her stingers that disables the speaker, stopping the noise from blasting. And then she shouts out to Clint that his symbiote should be able to focus now without all the noise. But Natasha doesn't see Damon Dran sneak up behind her and choke her up. But then Clint shouts out her name, Natasha. And then we get a sick reveal of Hawkeye, fully suited up in his new symbiote. And he looks freaking dope AF, y'all. And he tells Natasha to duck. And then he fires a symbiote arrow right at Dran just as Natasha blinds him with her stinger. And Clint's arrow puts Dran down. And then we go back to the past as Iron Man apologizes for misjudging Hawkeye, since he was apparently playing Black Widow the entire time. And he's gonna have to put in a good word with the Avengers for Hawkeye. And then back in the present day, Natasha compliments how dope the symbiote looks on Clint. And he does admit that it's pretty cool, but he doesn't plan on keeping it because an alien goop just isn't quite his thing. And then he tells Natasha that it's time for her to leave so he can turn himself in. But she tells him that that's enough of his martyrdom shtick. So instead, they decide that they will both just travel back to America and deal with whatever consequences come for them together. And as they clutch hands and ready themselves, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. So what did you guys think about the finale of this miniseries? I thought it was kind of fire myself, if I'm being honest. But honestly, I hope that Clint ends up keeping the symbiote, at least for a little while. I want to see what else that thing is capable of. If you notice the artwork when he fired that arrow, I didn't see a string. So the symbiote must just create and fire. And I think that's super dope for Clint. Plus, with the Venom War starting up, I wonder if he'll get involved now. We already know Natasha will because she's got a whole cover on a tie-in. But what did you guys think of this series as a whole? Did you think it was a solid 60th anniversary tribute to this pairing? And do you want to see more of Symbiote Hawkeye? You guys know I want to hear all your thoughts and theories down in the comments, whether they're good or bad. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this video and this channel, and you'd like to support the channel, then you can do so by stopping by the Comics Icon store and grabbing you some of this merchandise, including the background music heard right here in this video available for download. Or by joining the Iconic Fan Club channel membership, and it'll be a link in the description to join. But with your membership, your voice will be heard during our interactive live streams with yours truly, where we can talk about everything that's been going down in these issues, as well as ones that you'd like for me to go over in the future and other comic book news. Plus, you guys will get loyalty badges, member shoutouts, and up to 20% off of Comics Icon's merchandise from the Comics Icon store. And we've got tiers to the memberships as well, starting at just 99 cents. Or you guys can donate to the channel with a super thanks. And if you're not able to do any of these, then you can still be a tremendous help to the future of this channel by dropping a like, share, and subscribing to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world. But ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time. I'm out.